Yo, what's up, everybody? How we doing today? Hope everybody's good. We're going to move into three-syllable rhyme schemes, and this is where we're going to start getting into some more exciting stuff with stressed syllables and unstressed syllables, and probably one of the most important things when actually creating your rhyme schemes. I'm just going to turn the camera this way a little bit while we're doing this. But I think that this will be really cool for you guys to see, and just some examples and stuff like that of good rhyme schemes and how to manipulate them in such a way. So let's move on to the next slide. So stressed and unstressed syllables. Before we really dive in, we want to talk about stressed and unstressed syllables again, as you can see how important it actually is. I almost made a full topic just on stressed and unstressed, but it just really kind of trickles in a lot of these different aspects in hip hop. But some of the examples that we're going to go over, let's talk about like where are the stressed syllables in certain words and certain phrases. So for example, we're going to start with the example Antichrist, and because I think it's a good example of how to use stressed and unstressed syllables. So where are the stressed syllables in the word or phrase Antichrist? There are three syllables in the word Antichrist, obviously. So Antichrist, different three syllables. A cool tip for finding the actual how many syllables there are. A lot of the times you can find them by just counting how many vowels are in the word. There are some exceptions to that, but there's an A, an I, and another I, and that's where you get your syllable count from. So that's a cool way to determine where the syllables are. Now the emphasis is what a stressed syllable is. So where is the emphasis in the word Antichrist? Okay. Now determining this is important, and for native English speakers this is easy, but for people who aren't native English speakers, you have to determine where the emphasis and the stress is on the words or the sentence. So Antichrist. When you say it like normally, there's a stress on the and there's a stress on the I. So there's and I, kind of in terms of the actual two stress syllables that are important to see. So you got the and stressed, you got the t, and then Christ. So Antichrist. That's how you say it normally. That's where the stress and the unstressed are. Now the reason why this is important to understand, because when you're rhyming, the main part of the rhyme just needs to follow those stressed syllables. The words and the stuff in between isn't as important. So the unstressed syllables, like the t, so Antichrist. The T isn't as important to rhyme, and you can find way more options available for you, kind of like with perfect and slant rhymes. So this is where we're going to be. So you can use close to perfect rhymes, like for example, if you were to use Antichrist, panty heist, anti-diced, some tomatoes, shanty-priced. Those are all pretty close to perfect rhymes. They all have that antichrist, panty heist, anti-diced, which makes sense, right? But if you are to go on top of that, you can have more options available to you if you just use the near rhyme option. Now, why that's cool, so if you just use slant rhymes, so you'll actually break it down into, so you have anti as one section and then Christ as the next section, and you can come up with slant rhymes for those. So Antichrist, Camry lights. So lights and Christ, that's a slant rhyme. Anti and Camry, that's a slant rhyme. Family fights, Nancy Price, handy knife, fancy bikes, which is cool. You get more options that are available to you. Now on top of that, this is super important to understand. The rhyme, the stressed vowel, you don't have to rhyme the unstressed vowel. So in the middle of Antichrist, there's a little unstressed syllable in there. You don't have to rhyme that at all. It doesn't even have to have that E sound to it, okay? So that being said, you could have something that's like, let's see some examples on here. So you got camera sites. So camera sites. It's not Camry sites, it's camera sites. But Antichrist and camera sites still works. I can recite camera sites with grand advice and anvil strikes. I got candle lights and like Vannah White, I'm gambling dice. I got a sample slice so I can manage life. You can come up with words. So if you start with the stressed syllables that's the most important thing to rhyme. And like I said, the end of the rhyme, which is always the last syllable, is the most important to be the closest, right? So you could even say rapping life and Antichrist. It's not as good because, yes, the N and the M sound need to be there to make it sound a little bit more crisp, if you know what I mean by that. Let's take a look at another option here, which is private shows. Okay, so private shows doesn't have an N or an M in it. But say, for example, a word like kaleidoscopes. Now, that's 4 syllables, but if you structure your bars properly, then when you say, yeah, I got some private shows, but I'm looking through kaleidoscopes, it still is a multi, but there's that extra syllable at the start. So essentially, you would just use that guy. There's also going to be other options that you can use and change it into 2 words. So private shows, wine merlots, right? So you're not rhyming private with wine It's more like you're just using the stressed syllables to understand how this sounds. So I and O. That's essentially where you're trying to find it, right? So private shows, I and O. Wine merlots, designer clothes, violet robes, the highest dose. I'm flying close to the something something. You know what I mean? So I think that that's a cool thing to understand. And then with the stressed syllables, you still have the option for 3 syllable rhymes where it's all stresses, okay? So for example, if you wanted to rhyme Dwayne Wade shoots, those are all stressed syllables, okay? Because mostly they're all, it's 3 different words, right? It's almost like a compound 3 syllables, but it's not. Dwayne Wade shoots. Now you can go through and find each particular rhyme for like Dwayne and brain and game if you want to, but know that at the start of the rhyme, it's not as important to be perfect. So you could use words like Dwayne and 8 or may or make or hate, right? The most important is the end of the rhyme. That's what needs to be the closest to the phonetic families or the actual consonant sounds that comes off of it. So when Dwayne Wade shoots, you could say 8th grade roots or brainwave loops. Hey, yo, my brainwave loops when Dwayne Wade shoots. I got game day jukes since my 8th grade roots. It's like melee moves. I go home and make grape juice and never mix it with vodka cause I hate Grey Goose or something like that, right? You see how it just starts to sound dope when you get those multi-syllable rhyme schemes in there. I think that's a super cool thing to understand. Now you can also have stressed, stressed, and then unstressed syllables. Now it's important to know that because even though this is an unstressed syllable at the end of the rhyme, you still have to be as close to perfect at the end of the rhyme as possible. That is in order to maintain the structure. Because I could say I wanted to rhyme snowblower, right? You can't rhyme snowblower with slow going. It just doesn't sound that good. Snowblower and slow going. It doesn't sound as good as if it was snowblower with a comb over. You know what I mean? I saw his comb over after hitting him with a snowblower. I got no closure from being stone sober. The boat motor, give him the cold shoulder. I don't know how I fit broke toaster into there, but you can understand what I mean by the first part of the rhyme doesn't need to be as perfect, whereas the second part of the rhyme or the last part of the rhyme does need to be closer to tight, which is super interesting to understand. So I'll have a worksheet following this lesson, and you can start building your own multi-syllable rhyme book by going through and finding your own cool rhymes for some of these different options that I have laid in there. And I'll give you examples. You can also just come up with your own 3-syllable rhymes, but I highly recommend just doing it, writing out, 5 to 10 rhymes for each cool 3-syllable thing, so you can get a feel of the different structures from the stressed syllables and the unstressed syllables. But yeah, Edison, rhyme makers, we're going to move on to 4-syllable rhyme schemes after this. So peace. Catch you in the next video.